Good evening. Lovely to see you all, so many of you here as well. Just to give you an idea of who and what Wenter is, we are actually a social enterprise. We've been operating, and we operate in the main in Hertfordshire and Bedfordshire. And we provide services to small businesses, start-up businesses, small to medium enterprises to give them advice, support and help. We have 4 business centres where we provide low-cost office and workshop space for small businesses on short-term leases. So low cost, but also only 4 weeks of lease. So it gives an easy in, easy out option. We provide one-to-one business advice, and we apply for funding from local governments, the ESF, places like that. So we can provide that one-to-one advice free of charge to as many people as possible, particularly in the unemployed market, to help people get out of unemployment and into self-employment. We provide training. Last year, my little training department is me as a trainer and 4 ladies who work in the office. With an extended network of trainers, we delivered 490 courses in 22 locations in 5 counties around this kind of area, self-employment, start-up business. So we come from quite the heritage of helping people start up. We also have some online services as well. There's a little thing called My Incubator Ventures, which is an online business advice portal, which Monday to Friday 9 to 5 actually gives you either via Skype or chats access to our business advisors, so you can get business advice from wherever you are in the country. So we've got a huge amount of experience in this area, and I've been working them for 4.5 years now. A year and a half as a business advisor, giving one-to-one advice, and for the last 3 years delivering training. And our social purpose is very clear, and it's interesting what Jeff was saying. We have 2 divisions within Wenter. We have a corporate division. We have 4 business centres. Those 4 business centres create a surplus of in the region of £750,000 every year. And the idea behind that property is not only do we provide low-cost, flexible workspaces for start-up businesses, but our advisory services, the one-to-one services we do, should we find any problems being able to get funding from local government, we've got a surplus, a commercial arm that can then pay for us to, like Jeff says, I love that phrase, I'm stealing it entirely. We can do stuff for people. We can actually say, well, it doesn't matter actually that recently we've finished on the new enterprise allowance, which was we've done for 3 years. We're setting up 100 new businesses a month with an 87% success rate after 12 months. That funding has now come to a close. That doesn't mean to say that we can't actually help people now, because we've got a corporate arm that will allow us to draw from that £750,000 surplus and still be able to pay business advisors to supply one-to-one advice and support. We work exclusively with schools and with universities, and quite recently I went to prison. Not in that way, I actually went into a local prison to work with some of the guys who were about to be released to help them come up with business ideas. Because when they leave prison, I mean, getting a job just generally these days is a nightmare, but if you've got a criminal record, that's even harder. So one of the best ways for these guys to actually get into business and get some money running is to start their own companies. So I went and spent 7 weeks working with a group of 12 blokes who were within 6 to 8 months of release to help them get those business ideas sorted. So just as much as we have a corporate responsibility, at the same time, we are very much focused on helping people who need it most get themselves out of a cycle of potentially unemployment or crime and into self-employment. Interestingly, actually some of those guys in prison were very, very good business people. In fact, they've been running very successful businesses until they got caught. So there was a big suite of skills in there that we could draw upon. So, yeah, I came across this. I did, about 4 years ago, I did an event with some GCSE students. And we did a business game with them. We had to come up with a business, they had to create a business. In the morning, they had a dragon's den and all sorts. But part of that was a guest speaker. And she came along and did half an hour. A lady called Jane Barnes runs a company called Yakety Yak, a brilliant woman. She did a half an hour talk about her business and then did a Q&A. And one of the girls said, all right, Jane, what is the single most important thing about running a business? And she said, there's not one thing, there are 3 things. And those 3 things are research, research, research. The more you know, the better your information, the better your information, the better your decisions, the better your decisions, the more successful your business or enterprise is going to be. So it is very fundamental. And what we're going to be looking at today, what is research? A look at where you are now. A SWOT. Some of you may well have come across SWOT before, but we'll go through SWOT, which is a useful tool to help you find out where you are. We're going to look at types of research you can do and the methods behind that. And then we're going to look at some key areas. Researching customer, brand, legal, and finance. Finance, I'm just going to talk over a slide because funnily enough, in 2 weeks' time, I'm back here to do a finance and budgeting course. Then we'll talk about bringing it all together, and there is one place to bring it all together, and that's the business plan. So we're going to talk a little bit about business plans as we go through. So I looked up the dictionary definition of research when I was putting these slides together. The systematic investigation into and study of materials and sources in order to establish facts and reach new conclusions. Business, there is one word that you must avoid. This word. Assume. This is the word that you have to avoid in your business. Does anybody know what assume makes? Let me just get red. Assume makes an ass of you and me. I love that. You'd think I got that from somewhere sensible, but Samuel L. Jackson says it in The Long Kiss Goodnight. It was a really bad film with him and Gina Davis, but he is the coolest man on the planet. There is no denying that at all. You never assume anything. You need to go out and find the facts because you need to base your assumptions, if you are going to make an assumption, on evidence and good practice. Right, so what do you need to research? Well, this image says it all, really. This is a journey. Your business is just that. Your business is a journey. I don't know what your intentions are for your businesses. I know they've all got social purpose, but you want to build an entity that grows and evolves with your clients and with you. And this is it. Now, here's the roadmap you've got. Firstly, is it for you? This is one of the most important questions to ask yourselves. When you enter into any kind of experience like the ones you're stepping into, it's not for everyone. Once you've done the research, I've had people come up to me at the end of courses and go, do you know what, Mike, thanks for the course, but do you know what? That seems a little bit too much like hard work for me, and I'm going to go and try and get a proper job. It is a big thing. There was a great quote on LinkedIn recently. Entrepreneurs are the madmen who work 100 hours a week so they don't have to do 40 hours for someone else. And that is the kinds of things that you will be getting involved with. It's a big practice. It will take up a lot of your time, but it is incredibly rewarding. Is it for you? Get the actual business idea. You know, it's just an idea until someone starts paying you for it. We've got the planning stages here. We've got money, legal status. Now, your legal status is going to be social enterprise, you know, community interest company. Do you need property? All of the equipment you're going to need, VAT registration, customers, etc. All of the things you need to do to get your business together. And there is your own business, and this is what you need to do to get started. But that's not where it stops. One of the biggest mistakes I see regularly is that people start running the business and then they stop researching. Because the thing is, like I say, your business evolves. It's not a destination. And my favourite example of this recently, which is why research is so important, someone mentioned to me about Lucozade. Now, I think there may be some people in the room who are my age and slightly older. I'm 43, I know, I don't look it, it's my bones. When I was a kid, Lucozade came in a little orange pack with an orange cellophane wrapper around it. Yeah, anybody? People go, no, I don't remember that. And it was for when you was poorly. I remember 5 or 6 years of age on the sofa in front of my mum and dad's black and white television, children. Yes, there used to be only 3 channels, and it was black and white. And I would have Lucozade and Heinz tomato soup. Lucozade because it was supposed to make you better, and Heinz tomato soup because my mum, who was a nurse, said it tastes the same coming up as it does going down, so it's great when you're poorly. But what is Lucozade now?
Sports drink.
Sports drink. It's not for making people feel better, it is a sports drink. Now, obviously, Lucozade were doing some research, and they were seeing the way attitudes were changing throughout people's interaction with their product. And they started very subtly changing things. In the late 80s, I remember the adverts were Daley Thompson, the former Olympic gold medal decathlete, and he started doing Lucozade adverts. In the late 90s, Lara Croft of the Tomb Raider franchise was in the adverts. And now Lucozade has changed entirely to something that we have when we do sports, sponsoring all sorts of things like this. So, research is an ongoing thing. Yes, you need to do the research before you start trading or before you start operating to make sure you've got all your I's dotted and your T's crossed. But at the same time, you do need to carry on after that to look at changing attitudes, changing trends, technology, etc. So it is actually a journey, it's never a destination. So before you can research anything, you figure out, where am I now? So you've got the idea. You've got startup costs to consider. Insurances, we will talk legal a little bit later on. Do you need premises? How are you going to sell? What are the legal implications? Tax, VAT. Bear in mind, in 2 weeks' time we are covering this, and I will tell you the Jaffa Cake example of the insanity of VAT. VAT is entirely bonkers. But I'll leave that. I'll tease that. Hopefully you'll come back in 2 weeks and I'll tell you about Jaffa Cakes. There's also pasty tax as well, which is a West Countryman, was an affront to everything West Country. Marketing, accounts, pricing, all of these things, these are all the hats that you are going to have to wear. Regardless of whether this is a social enterprise or whether you're a mobile hairdresser or whether you're going to be, what was one of the businesses I had? Oh yeah, compost heap at the back garden. She bred lobworms. And she sold worms to fishermen via the internet. Yes, you can post worms to people. Put worms in a box, post them. All of these things, all of these businesses, very diverse. I had a gentleman on my course on Monday who was selling pleasurable equipment via the internet. I'll leave that to your imagination. Sadly, his web page, when he showed it to me, didn't leave it to mine. Whatever the idea is, it needs this backup. It needs this sense of, is it viable? Does it have legs? Because even a social enterprise has to make profit. Not-for-profit organisations are not no-profit organisations. They are required to make a profit, but the thing is, the rules are that profit then has to be channeled back into your good causes. But without a profit, you can't pay yourself, your staff, your premises, that kind of thing, and then suddenly everyone suffers because the very demographic you're trying to help suddenly doesn't have any help because you don't have the finances to support them. So all this stuff is very important. Who's come across a SWOT analysis before? Is it something people are familiar with? I thought some of you might have done. It's very, very popular at the moment. I mean, these things go back donkey's years. But if you put a business plan together at the moment to try and get funding from a bank or a body like a government forum, etc., they do tend to like SWOTs. So that's why I always cover SWOT in courses, but I'll give you some of my thoughts on this in a minute. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And the idea behind a SWOT analysis is it's, you look at your strengths. What are my strengths? Do I have some financial backing already? Do I have connections with potential funding bodies? Do I have passion and commitment? Because never underestimate those in terms of your ability to run a business. And you list your strengths. And then you have a look at the weaknesses. Is it that the financials are not quite in line yet? Is it that I'm not entirely sure who my client base, who my customer is? And you list the weaknesses. Opportunities for you to grow and move the business forward. So, is there a piece of technology that are going to make your life easier? Is there a group that I can join that's going to give me access to people who are going to pay me money or give me money to do whatever I do? And again, opportunities and threats. Competitors. There are competitors out there. We are a social enterprise, but we're not the only social enterprise in the country that does what we do. We are by far the best, but we're not the only one. So threats are going to be competition, and whatever you decide to do and whatever demographic that you choose to help out, there are probably people already out there trying to target the same people, in which case you need to know who they are so you can adjust to it. And the idea behind a SWOT is you sell your strengths, overcome your weaknesses, seize your opportunities, and eliminate your threats. Not physically, though, that is illegal. And what you can do with the SWOT, and why I generally prefer it to most of the other acronyms you can get, is that you're always trying to move it that way. You're always trying to take your weaknesses and your threats and either get rid of them or turn them into strengths and opportunities. Always trying to move it that way. It's got some energy and motion to it. So sit down and research yourself more than anything. These are called internal things. So these are things that are internal to you, internal to the business for yourself. These are external considerations, so things that are going to happen outside of the business. Analyze them, understand them, and if there is anything in there you don't understand, funny enough, you do the 3 R's and you research, research, research. I personally detest SWOT, and this is a personal thing. My wife loves lists. I detest lists. I don't know if any of you from training or education backgrounds, but I'm what's called a visual kinesthetic. There are generally 3 types of learning style: visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. Auditory people like lists and order. They read manuals. Visual people like to be shown stuff. And kinesthetic people just like to muscle people out the way and just get on with it and figure it out for themselves. I am 80% kinesthetic, 20% visual, and I have no auditory capacity whatsoever. Don't tell me stuff, it goes in that ear and falls out the other side. Show me or let me do it. As a result, a list does not engage with me in the slightest. My wife loves lists. Every time I have a day off, I get a list of jobs I need to complete. Thank you very much. And they never used to get done. And I joked one day that, Nicola, just draw me pictures for goodness sake. So I had a day off, and instead of a list, I had a little stick man with a duster and a little stick man with a lawnmower. And you know what? That list got done because I can understand it. Quite recently, I did a show called The Man of La Mancha. I had the lead in it, and there was one line I didn't get right any night because it was a list. I knew what the first word was, I knew what the last word was, and I made it up in the middle because I thought because my brain doesn't retain that stuff. My daughter's doing Joseph and her amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat at the moment. Red and yellow and pink and green and orange and purple, and I'll leave that to her. The point of that is that we all have our own ways of engaging with information. I do not engage with information when it's just written down. I have to have some kind of physicality behind it. The way I manage things like SWOT is to get the world's best invention, which is the Post-it note, and I download all of my stuff onto Post-it notes, empty my brain onto Post-it notes, and I smother them all over a wall. And then I will physically move that into a list. I still end up with a list of things to do, but it's one that I've actually physically and visually interacted with, therefore it stays in my brain. So whatever you do, make sure that it's something that you can engage with and you update and come back to regularly. Don't let people shoehorn you into particular ways of thinking. You could do SMART, you can do GROW, there's SWOT, EISIB, C, SMART, CIGAR, all of these blooming acronyms that in my 12 years as a manager were rammed down my throat and I really hated. You need to figure out your own style and your own way of doing this, but the most important thing is you do it. And you do it regularly. You have to. Okay. So, types of research. Generally 2 types of research here. There is quantifiable and qualifiable. Quantifiable research is about numbers, things you can count. So, do a survey and say, what's a score out of 10? Out of 10, what do you score this? 7. You can count that, you can collate it, you can add it up. Now, how often do you use? I use it 5 times a week. Thank you very much, 5 times a week, a number I can deal with. Now, you can go to a competitor and count average footfall, and I'll give you an example of that in a minute when we talk about mystery shopping. Qualifiable is more about the emotion. So this is objective. It's about facts. Whereas qualifiable is more subjective. How do you feel? How do you think? Getting people to leave comments about stuff. The problem you've got is that emotion is a pretty ephemeral thing and everyone feels differently about stuff. But if you're asking for a qualifiable question, it's important to understand how people feel about things. You can't rely on it totally because people are very different and we'll put our own spin on stuff, which we'll come to in a second as well. But countable stuff, statistical evidence, and this is more about, you used to get, what do you prefer, Hellman's or Tesco's own? I mean, in my view, there's no argument, it's Hellman's. But, some people will prefer Tesco's. Some people prefer that, the other. But you're getting impressions and understanding. So these are subjective things. These are objective. And can I just say that if you guys do start applying for funding, in particular, most funding companies are very much interested in objective stuff. And we'll come to actually diversity of customers and market segmentation in a little while. So, quantifiable and qualifiable. So here are various methods of research. Primary research takes you directly to the source. You go to the people you're interested in and engage directly with them. Secondary research is what's traditionally called desk-based research. So BIFs and BOPs are business information fact sheets and business opportunity proformas. Where Winter gets that is from a system called Cobra or Cobweb. And it is a online database that you can put anything into. How do I set up a social enterprise? How do I write a contract? How do I set up as a mobile therapist? It gives you 10 to 15 pages of information about those various things and has contact details for industry-specific people as well. That is unfortunately a licensed product. I don't know whether the university has got contact to that, but certainly you'll find a lot of central libraries have access to it. And funnily enough, if you join my Incubator Ventures, we have an agreement with them to put it onto our systems. But they're very good. Business information fact sheets, business opportunity performance are a means for you to get good, solid information, and Cobra is a licensed product which can give you that on a totally up-to-date manner. I'm going to come back to this in a second. Libraries, never underestimate the wonders of libraries. You can get so much local knowledge from libraries, and they do also come generally with free Wi-Fi as well, which is always useful. Trade journals, looking at trade journals that are to do with what you're doing will give you insight into how market trends are changing, how your competitors are engaging with customers, who your customers are, shifts in thought, so you can start making some plans about how that works. Companies House. This is where you ultimately will go to set up your community interest company or your social enterprise. It's where people set up limited companies. But the great thing about Companies House is that any limited company and social enterprises come under the auspices of limited company. At the end of every financial year, have to submit their accounts to Companies House. It is a legal requirement. And any single one of you can pay £1. Go onto Companies House website and check out your competitors' accounts for the last 5 years. So you can see whether they're doing all right. If they're not doing very well, nickel their customers and buy their stuff cheap when they close down. That's awesome. But if they're doing very well, perhaps study them and find out what it is they're doing right, because obviously you never copy anyone. That's wrong. But certainly there is nothing wrong with being inspired by it, emulating, adapting what they're doing to make it work for you. Local newspapers give you insight on what's happening in the local area. Obviously, the internet. It is a wonderful, wonderful resource, but what I would suggest with the internet is find at least 3 sources of information before you guarantee that it is right. Wikipedia should be called Fibipedia, really. There's a great story with Wikipedia. I can never remember the name of the guy. He's the guy who does the Direct Line adverts with the fluffy hair, and he's the guy who... he was on Chris Moyles once, and Chris Moyles said to him, "Oh, right, so how's the beekeeping going?" And he went, "Your researchers have been on Wikipedia, haven't they?" And, because on his Wikipedia page, someone has put that he likes keeping bees. And he's allergic to bees. But everyone asks him about bees because it's on his Wikipedia page, and obviously Wikipedia is the truth. So he's actually learned about beekeeping. So at least he can talk about beekeeping in his interviews now. So try and find information from the internet and more than one source to corroborate it. And company reports, when limited companies or large companies come to the end of the year, they generally deliver a report on their activities over the previous 12 months. The winter one is coming out very shortly, and they can learn an awful lot from their marketing and their, the way their business works from there. But what I want to look at is this. When we communicate with people face-to-face, there are generally 3 ways in which we communicate, the way that I am talking to you guys at the minute. And that is tone, body language, and words. Okay, I'm actually basing this on a study that was done in the late 60s, early 70s, and is generally established as a reasonably accurate representation of the way we interact with each other generally. Out of 100%, how important do you think tone is? Give us a figure. How much, sorry? 30. 85. We got 85. Okay. Any others? 65. 65. Okay. This is when we find out how important it is for people to come to the finance and budgeting course in 2 weeks' time. Because the person who said 30 now has only 70% left to spend. How are you going to split your 70% between body language and words?
7% on words.
7% on words, and you're leaving 63% on body language. Yeah, that's right, isn't it? And which is why I run the finance course. 85%ers have got 15% left. What are we going to do it? Body language to words?
10 and 5.
10 to body language, 5 to words. Yep, okay. And finally, the 65%ers have got 35% left to spend between body language and words. What are you going to do?
10 and 25.
Sorry?
25 on words and 10.
25 on words and 10 on body language. Interesting. Okay. There's one that's reasonably close, actually. Let's get red. The actual results, tone is 38%. Body language, 55%. And words, 7%. When we are talking like this. Now, let me illustrate. Have another colour. Let's do this one in pink. Sorry, never give me a colour palette. I'll be all over the place. Here are 3 words. Don't get creeped out. I love you. 3 wonderful words that everyone in the world would want to hear, let's face it. And if someone came up to you, and hopefully someone you know, because it was a stranger, this would be creepy, but if someone came up to you and went, oh, I love you. That's nice, isn't it? Their tone's low, they're scrunching their face up, it's really nice. And you go, oh, thanks, or run a mile. When I was 12 years of age, I fancied Jackie Welsh. Jackie Welsh looked like Princess Di. All the boys fancied Jackie Welsh, and I was a 6-foot-tall science geek. And all the way through biology last period, I screwed up my courage to go and ask Jackie out. And I went to the front and went, Jackie, can you go out with me? Because my voice was like that in those days. And she went, I love you. Which not only means it's entirely different than the other one, but also meant I didn't have a girlfriend for a further 7 years. Obviously, words are important. You know, someone said, okay, but what about giving directions? Surely words are important in terms of giving directions. Well, yes, absolutely. However, if I gave directions, I met you at a networking event and said, I can't find your premises. I've looked for it for ages. Please, can you give me directions? And if you went, right, from the bus station, you go down the high street, turn left, and it's right there, okay? Or, oh, right, from the bus station, you go straight down the high street, turn left, and it's right there, okay? Now, to be honest with you, those directions will both get people to the right place. But let's face it, the first version is not going to get them anywhere near where you are. So, in terms of our ability to engage with people, it is body language and tone that gets across emotion and feeling. Obviously, you don't ignore words, because without words, I mean, I remember when I was 10 and I was in France for the first time, and Mum and Dad sent me off to buy some baguettes and croissants and milk. And I remember I went along to the lady, I'm clicking that with my finger, I've got a touch screen laptop, and I keep touching the screens of all the computers around. And I went into the shop and said, 2 baguettes, 6 croissants, milk. Because I had no idea what the French word for milk was. And unfortunately, the lady in the shop didn't know what the English word for milk was either. She went, not like French people do. And after a little bit of, I thought, oh, for goodness sake. And I went, moo. And I got my milk. So words aren't entirely important. We do need them, but actually to give words meaning and sense, we do need to put body language and tone. Now, I haven't done that for a bit of fun, because it does relate to what we're going to talk about right here. When you are researching, we have talked about the research for, is that going to, yes, it is going to come up, lovely. Primary research, where you're dealing directly with people in some way, shape or form. Now, personal surveys are great for qualifiable information, because you are there in front of that person, and body language, tone of voice, you can measure that from them. So when you ask them an opinion, a question that is, how do you feel, you can see through their body language, through their tone of voice, through their, the words they use, how they feel about it. We can be never entirely objective, but we can see it and we can record it. So if you want qualifiable information, personal surveys, focus groups, face-to-face stuff is ideal, because you can judge it, you can use your own good judgment, and we human beings are actually pretty good at that naturally. You don't need to be a body language expert to know what people are saying. If they go, no, I don't like it, we can measure that. The problem with telephone surveys is suddenly we lose an awful lot of body language. A certain amount of body language does come over on the phone. I was always taught to stand up when I was dealing with complaints. I come from a contact centre industry. You know, talking on the phone, it gives you confidence, it lifts you. But when we're doing telephone surveys, actually perhaps it's better to concentrate more on quantifiable information, because we can't judge entirely accurately what people's reactions are on a kind of an emotional level. By all means ask them, but bear in mind you're losing around about 55% of your ability to judge that because you can't see them. Postal surveys, internet surveys and questionnaires, problem with that is there is no tone and there is no body language. In which case, to be honest, the best thing to do is to stick to quantifiable results, things you can count. And by all means, have a little note for comments if people want to write it down. But bear in mind, someone might write, I love you in the comments box, but they might have had the kind of day I had when I was 12, and that I love you means entirely different. Because what you will do is you will apply your own tone of voice and body language to that phrase as you read it. So it becomes entirely subjective rather than useful. So, different elements here. And then you've got telemarketing. If you're going to do telemarketing, same with telephone surveys, have a script, have a clear idea of what you want to ask and what you want to get out of it. Because you'll phone someone up and say, I'm only going to spend 2 minutes of your time, please, will you help me out? What you've got there is then a set of questions which I would suggest are going to be highly quantifiable. And a script, I don't mean one you read like this and go, hello, good afternoon, how can I help? But have a beginning, a middle and an end to the conversation. How are you going to open, what you're going to find out in the middle and how you conclude. Because that means you can control the flow of the conversation, you can get the information you require and then quantify it properly. Little tip with questionnaires though. If you are going to write a questionnaire to research anything, I am a great believer in having an even number when you come to, you know, marks out of 10, whatever it might be. Because what will happen is if you hand someone a questionnaire with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what is the most frequent number that's going to get circled? 3. However, can I do this? No, I can't. If you get rid of 5, they have to make a decision. That's because I've got my hand on there. They have to decide whether it's in the bottom 50% or the top 50%, which means you're getting a slightly more meaningful response. This is something that I learned from interviewing people. You know, when you've done 400 interviews in 3 weeks and you're really tired, you will just mark straight down the middle because you want to go home. 1, 2, 3, 4 forces you to say, is this person the top 50 or the bottom 50%? So I would stick with even numbers in scoring and never go above 10, otherwise it just gets a bit too silly and difficult to judge properly. One other thing, if you've got Google+, by the way, everyone has Google+, you may not know it, but you have. Google+ is an awful social network. It's a rubbish social network, but some of the utilities on it are excellent. And one of the things that Google+ allows you to do is to deliver surveys to the people who follow you on Google+. But as part of your Google+ package, there is a thing called Google Drive. And Google Drive allows you to put together questionnaires and email them to groups of people. It's a tool to help you do that. So if you are thinking of doing questionnaires and emailing them out, Google Drive is great. SurveyMonkey is very good as well.
In residential survey, use SurveyMonkey.
Yeah, and we've used SurveyMonkey many times, and I think SurveyMonkey can also be linked into Facebook as well. And I don't think it costs any money. And when you kind of...
For the basic one?
Yeah, when you're in new business and setting up, free is an absolutely superb price to be thinking about. Right. And the last thing I'll talk about is the mystery shopping. Phoning up competitors, going to see what other people are doing. A lot of people feel a little bit funny about that, and it's a bit unethical. Rubbish. Go and see what other people are doing. Phone them up. See what their customer service is like. Go to their website. See how that flows. Make sure yours is better. My favourite mystery shopping story is a chap who was setting up a coffee shop, and he went to a rival coffee shop and he bought one of those refillable coffees for £2.50, where he can just keep filling his coffee up, and he sat in a corner of that coffee shop for 4.5 hours, nursing his refillable coffee. And every time someone walked in, he'd make a note of whether they're male, female, how old they were, whether they had luggage with them, what they bought, how they paid for it, did they have kids. And he came out after, was kicked out after 4.5 hours, but with some of the most brilliant quantifiable information ever about the habits of his customers. And funny that, because one of the most important things for you to research actually are your customers. Your customers, clients, whoever, are without a doubt the most important commodity in your enterprise. You do not design a business around you. You design your business around them. And your business, your enterprise, does not belong to you, it belongs to them. Sounds like we've got a bit of Freshers Week going on. So it's important to understand who they are. I was doing a Presenting Yourself Online course in Bedford this morning, and it's all about that. Your website is not about you, it's about your customers, because they're the ones who have to like it. So, we're going to do a little exercise here. This is a medium-priced drill. A medium-priced drill. Now, I am sorry for those of you who are into equality. However, marketing and this kind of stuff is about demographics. It's about groups of people, because your marketing activities, your customer liaison is about targeting specific groups because they will have particular attitudes. So, in general, who would buy a medium-priced drill? So, would it be a man or a woman? In general. Probably going to be a man, yes. Are they going to have a detached, semi-detached, or bungalow? What kind of house do you think they have? Semi-detached. Semi-detached. Yeah, there are actually right answers to this, by the way. Age range. 10-year age range. 30 to 40?
40 to 35.
40 to 50, what was that, sorry?
35 to 40.
We've got kind of in the actual, because this is based on an actual study, funny enough, 35 to 45. Married or single?
Married.
Why would that be?
Because they're trying to economise.
No, they're not. It's because your missus tells you you have to buy one and put a shelf up. Like I said, in general.
Why doesn't she do it herself then? Why doesn't she do it herself?
Because that's why she married me.
She's too busy washing up.
Yeah, no, I do the washing up. And I do the ironing.
My children tell me,
And the cooking.
they tell me it's the other way around. The men do the cooking and the women do the DIY.
No, my wife sits with her feet up and lets me get on with it. You'll never meet my wife, so I'm safe. So, yes, married. Salary range, 10 grand salary range. You were closest. Someone over here said in the ages. What did you say for the ages? 25 to 35. And what kind of job are we talking about here? Blue collar, are we talking are we talking workman, are we talking an office person, junior manager? Sorry?
White collar, middle manager.
White collar middle manager, yeah. Middleman, I'll put here. And finally, what are their hobbies likely to be, do you think? Look at this person. Sorry? Potentially fishing? Sorry? No, carry on, I say. I don't mind.
I was going to say anything the white.
That's true enough, because I'd love to watch the rugby on a Sunday afternoon, but I'm not allowed. I mean, something like internet. 35 to 45, someone's likely to be into the internet. They're going to be football, rugby, etc. So this is very silly. You know, you wouldn't do a little bit more than this for your research, obviously. But the really horrible thing is that, you know, we all consider ourselves to be massively individual. And we are. About 20% of us is anyway. 80% of us falls directly into a particular demographic category, whether we like it or not. 20% of us is brilliant and unique. I am a classically trained singer. I am a qualified fencing instructor. That is not posts in the ground, that's hitting people with sticks. I can teach you how to fence. I've written a book, which I didn't publish because it was pants. I run 4 websites, 4 Twitter accounts. I'm a complete gaming nerd and have been playing since the ZX81 in 1981, and I queued up to 1.5 years ago to buy my PS4 at midnight from Game in Milton Keynes. All of these things are what make me individual, but do you know what? This is me. I am a man. I live in a semi-detached house. I am between 35 and 45. Yes, I'm married.
You sound happy?
She's wonderful, actually. She is absolutely wonderful. I do earn between 25 and 35k. I do now, or used to. I am from a middle management background. That's what I did. I used to manage people for Barclaycard and places like that. I got fed up with fishing when I was about 12, really. But, you know, don't like football, but I like rugby. I'm very internet savvy. So what we've got here is a picture of who our ideal customer is. So if we go back to our drill, I am the person who buys this drill. Do you know, not only do I have a medium-priced drill at my house, I have a medium-priced circular saw, a medium-priced electronic screwdriver, and a medium-priced angle grinder. I have no idea why I have a medium-priced angle grinder, but it's there in the shed somewhere. So if you are going to be marketing and targeting a group of individuals, you need to know who they are. Marketing, which is actually a massive part of any business, because marketing is attracting people to you. Marketing is not a shotgun. A lot of people take a shotgun approach to marketing. They try and hit 1,000 people with one blast. No, it's a sniper rifle. You say, I am interested in those people. I'm going to find out what they need and I'm going to give it to them. And that comes down to methods like, do we use Facebook or LinkedIn? Do we use Pinterest or Instagram? Do we have a marketing campaign on the internet, or are they of an age where actually it's better to get in touch with them through the University of the Third Age, through the Women's Institute? How do we get these people to notice us, but more importantly, how do we get them to love us enough to either part with their cash to fund your enterprises, or to come along and benefit from the enterprises? And I'd imagine the idea, I mean, certainly what we try to do as much as possible is to offer free advice, support and help to people. And it's amazing how little people value free. It's incredible, but that's what we want to do, and that is our mantra, because our people we want to help are generally unemployed. So they don't have a lot of money, we don't want to charge them for our stuff, we want to give it as much of it for free. But again, how do you entice, how do you actually give free value to people? It's a very interesting conundrum. So, understand your client groups. So what we're looking at now, the types of things you're going to have to research. So we're going to go through the types of things that you're going to have to think about to make your project kind of have a holistic approach. So if you are approaching people, as you know, inevitably some of you guys are going to have to get funding. You look credible, you look prepared. So F's and B's, features and benefits. These are very, very, I say this all the time, pretty much every slide I say this is really critical, because pretty much everything is critical here. Features and benefits. Features are what it does, benefits are why people buy it. So what you need to do is to understand whatever you are putting down, what are the bits that it does compared to the bits that people buy. People generally buy 2 things. They buy benefits and they buy people. So they're buying into you, but they're also buying into what's going to make their life better, easier. So you have to figure out what the features are, what it does, and the benefits, how it's going to appeal to people. And again, the benefits are going to be different depending on who you are targeting. What I'm saying is that you guys are part of the sales package. You. So if you are going to either someone who's going to give you some funding, or you are working with a particular demographic of people to help them out, they've got to engage with you. They buy into you as a person. So they buy into the person. So if you walk into a shop and you've got a grumpy salesperson, you're likely to walk out. But if you walk into a shop and you have someone who goes, "Good morning, how can I help?" You'll probably run away. It's about buying into you, because you're part of the package. I mean, you guys are going to be setting up the majority of these enterprises either on your own or in small groups, I would imagine. Am I right? Yep. So you are the face of the company, and as a result, it's important that people buy into you. You're part of the package. You're part of the sales process. And they also buy into the benefits, how it's going to make their life better, different, etc. So the feature is what it does. The benefit, feature what it is. The benefit is what it does. Because of timings, I was going to do a different exercise, but I don't think we got time to do it. It's one of the nice to haves rather than needs to haves. But let's have a little look. We've got 4 different businesses here. An accountant. What are the features of an accountant? What do accountants do? Count money. Yeah, that's a feature. They count money. Money, 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 money. Scrooge. What else do they do?
They help you with your tax returns.
They help with tax returns. Lovely tax returns. What else do they do? Sorry?
They audit.
They audit, yeah, they can do audits for you. One of the things that accountants do very well is to save you costs, because there are certain things you can claim as end of year tax returns, which is in 2 weeks' time, and they're very good at efficiencies in the business. But the thing is, if you walked up to someone and said, "I can do your spreadsheets, your tax returns, and I can do all of that stuff," they probably go, because it's not interesting, it's pretty dry. What are the benefits of an accountant for a business? Save them money. Yeah, what else?
Accuracy.
Sorry?
Accuracy.
Accuracy. Sorry?
Efficiency in terms of...
Efficiency. Now the thing is, these are words that businesses like. Save me money, make me efficient. And the interesting thing is, it's about, again, knowing your customers. A little example of that is when I first started Winther ages ago, we had an advisory meeting. So all the business advisors, we had a meeting, and they brought one of our clients in to talk to us about coaching. Because I was brought into Winther because of my training, coaching and management backgrounds, but a lot of the other advisors were not necessarily people who'd coached. Very good at giving business advice, but they didn't necessarily have some of the soft skills that are attached with coaching. And this lady came in to deliver coaching, and she was a life coach. Now, life coaches are all about fluff and loveliness, because they're, they do one-to-one stuff, make people feel confident and build them up. It's lovely. And she came into this group of 15 hard-nosed business people. One of our advisors used to run 70 branches of Lloyd's in London. And she came in and started talking about serendipity. And you could immediately see every single one of those guys going, "Oh." Because do you know what? Business people don't care about serendipity, they care about efficiency. So the benefits of accountants would be, for instance, if I went to pitch myself to a business, "Accountant, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take away your pain. Because you hate all of that stuff. I'm going to take away, I'm going to do it for you. Do you know what? I'm going to do it better. And because I'm going to do it better, I'm going to save you money. I'm going to make you more efficient. I'm going to make you more tax savvy. And do you know what else I'm doing? By taking all that pain away from you, I'm giving you back your time. And what you can then is go out and you can find more customers. You can spend more time developing your business. So do you know what? By hiring me, not only am I saving you money, I'm making you money. Hire me. The benefits is what are going to get people to be interested. If you are going to a funding body like, a council or the lottery or anything like that, they want to know the statistics. How many people can you engage with? For us, it's the measurement that we're on is a number of startups. So how many of the people who come through our doors start up their businesses, and then the next measure is how many of them are still trading 12 months down the line. So they'll be wanting those kinds, because the benefit for them is that they're giving money and they want to know that it's going to regenerate the economy by getting people out of benefits, spending money, employing people, moving forward. That's their list of criteria, their KPIs, their SLAs, key performance indicators, service level agreements. However, you were talking to me earlier on about you want to engage with the NEAT community. Do you want me to give your idea away, or is it secret? Okay. Now, NEAT's not in education, employment, or training young people. The thing is, if you talk to a load of NEATs and say, oh, well, what we're going to do is increase efficiency and you're going to set up your own, it's not going to be anything that they have any degree of interest in. So you will all have the features of what happens, but you need to concentrate on the benefits, research them, because the benefits is what will attract people to the business. And it boils down to a little thing called market segmentation. Market segmentation. Now this example here is a theatre. P1, P2, P3 are the performances, the products. So you've got the Crucible for the adults, you've got Grease for the family, you've got Wind in the Willows for the kids. M1, M2, M3 are high-end people with a ton of cash to spend, the guys who play the medium-priced drill, and the people at the other end of the economic spectrum who actually going anywhere is a treat because they don't have money for it. Now, if you are going to market to just the M1s, what are you going to give them? You're going to get them to your theatre. What kind of things do you think they'll expect?
High quality and lots of secondary products.
High quality, secondary products, champagne reception, meet the cast, celebrities, all of that kind of stuff, because they're prepared to spend the cash on it. If you try and market that to these people, they're not going to be interested at all. So one of the things that all of you will have, I think, is at least 2 different types of customer that you have to engage with. One at the end that is going to provide you potentially with the funding and the resources to carry out the good work you want to do. The other is the group of people that you are going to be working with. And can I just ask Jeff to give the example that he spoke to me about on the phone a couple of weeks ago when we chatted about, where this didn't quite work out.
Well, this was in the context, and I think I've mentioned it to you before, about where a group of people, a social entrepreneur decided that they were going to address homelessness, and they didn't in fact do the research into homelessness, and they were in fact targeting homeless people in Oxford. And the view was that what they wanted to do for them was to provide them with a deposit for a flat as a result of this social enterprise. They were going to run guided tours. And the problem arose that that particular group of people didn't take up the product, didn't take up the opportunity particularly, because the person who was offering this facility hadn't engaged with them properly. And really what they wanted was not having a deposit for a flat. They wanted some support with the reason why they were homeless. And the reason why they were homeless was often quite complex. It was possibly because of their domestic circumstances where families had split up. It was possibly due to addiction, or it was possibly sort of an alcohol problem, possibly being that they're an ex-offender. So there was a whole multiple. So this person was actually just seeing the top of the iceberg and treating everyone the same. And it goes back to that point I made right at the very beginning. He was trying to do things to people rather than for people. And that whole issue of understanding your segments of your market, of who's involved in that particular, in understanding the client, is just important. You've got double the problem with a social enterprise, because you've got a client group and you've got a customer group that you're actually dealing with, and you need to understand both of them. Just one point I wanted to pick up on very quickly with regard to the vertical market specialisation. So you were targeting M1. And let's look at the P3, which is Wind in the Willows. Okay, who's it aimed at? Who's P3? It was Wind in the Willows. Do you remember this? I mean, do you know what Wind in the Willows is? No, pantomime.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Mr. Toad and Mr. Badger. Poop poop. Oh, dearie me.
It's a very simplistic play, and it's aimed at which group do you think? Kids.
It is, yeah.
Yes, so it's an experience for kids. Who makes the buying decision though?
Parent.
So sometimes it's a bit more complicated. I'm just going to throw this bit in. Who is the customer and who's making the buying decision?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you need to. Sometimes you need to unpackage that. Research. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. So this is something that you guys are going to have to get your head around. I mean, I work for a social enterprise. Recently, I worked for a client group who were prisoners. Really lovely guys, actually. The first prison I was going to go to was a Bedford prison. I grew up in and around Bedford. It's a maximum security prison. We were going to put it on there, but there were only 4 of the 17 people interested they could guarantee my safety with. So we decided to go to a nice prison instead. Trust me, nice prison is not descriptive of what they're like. But there's a group of people who have very different needs than we've got a scheme that's being run, that's where I was this morning, by Bedford Borough Council, Central Beds Council and Milton Keynes Borough Councils, called Women and Broadband. And it's about supporting women, whether they're startups or existing businesses, in interacting with social media, websites, in broadband, internet into their businesses. So this morning I was doing Presenting Yourself Online. Again, different group of people to engage with than over here. I've done CV and interview skills for people who've been on the work programme. People on the work programme have been unemployed for at least 2 years and are generally incredibly unconfident, disenfranchised. I mean, they're a tough group. So you're going to have to really focus in these areas, because on one hand, you got the money guys, and I like the fact there's a client group and a customer group. The client group are the people who are going to be providing, hopefully, with the funding. The customer group are the people you are actually going to be giving some benefits to. And actually, you really do need to understand what their needs are, and if there is actually a need. It's a great thing that someone mentioned on a course once, which I've shamelessly stolen ever since. Most of the intelligent things I say I've stolen from other people. Just because there is a niche in the market does not mean that there is a market in the niche. It might be there as a niche because no one wanted it in the first place. So this is where the research, and it is, I mean, it's something we bang on about like no one's business. The more you know, the better your decisions. Better your decisions, the more successful you're likely to be. And now is the time to do that research, because if you actually start delivering your project and you've still got massive great gaps in what you need to know, suddenly you find yourself in all sorts of strife. So this is something you guys are going to have to think very specifically about, which is why I brought this slide in, because it's not just about knowing one type of customer, it's knowing all of those little bits and pieces, because you know customers are also your suppliers. If you're going to go and get supplies from some, you know, you're running a kitchen for people, well, you've also got a customer who are the people that will give you the supplies that you're going to cook. All of these people need to be researched, need to understand how to approach them effectively. The dictionary definition of customer is someone to whom I provide a service. And you could argue that your suppliers, your accountants, the people who, you know, your staff, they're all customers of you, because you are providing them with a service just as much as they are. So you treat them with the same courtesy, respect and insight as the people who are potentially giving you cash. That way you always know, hopefully, where you stand. Right, before we move on to some more dry and boring subjects, executive cars. When we say executive cars, what picture is conjured into your mind? What are we thinking? Give me a car. What kind of car?
Jag.
A Jag. Yeah.
5 Series.
Sorry?
BMW 5 Series.
BMW 5 Series. It's all Greek to me. Car's what you drive. Aston Martin Vanquish.
Oh, yes.
I know that one. They're gorgeous. Yeah, lovely. So if you set an expectation up, executive cars, and that turns up, you're likely to be a midge disappointed. Expectation is very important as well, because when you present yourself to a client group or a customer group with an idea, they will create an expectation. They have an idea of what that should look like, and you really need to deliver upon that. So you need to understand it. If you want to see one of the best, the course I did this morning on Presenting Yourself Online, we did the good, the bad and the ugly. And we had 2 good websites, 2 bad websites, and 2 downright ugly websites. And one of the really bad websites was the Institute of Advanced Visual Studies. Make a note of the Institute of Advanced Visual Studies, and when you have a moment, visit their website and see whether it lives up to the expectation of the Institute of Advanced Visual Studies. I think you get by my tone that it didn't. It is without a doubt one of the least visually appealing websites you will ever see in your life. It's awful. Expectation. One of them was the Yale, an ugly one was it was the Yale University's creative arts page. Oh, it was awful. Expectation is everything. And there is generally two types of business. I mean, okay, how this applies to you comes down to who your demographic is. But there's transactional businesses and there's value-based businesses. Transactional businesses are about low cost, high turnover. Value-based businesses are about high cost, perceived value in many respects. So you might find that when you're talking to funding bodies, it might be about the value down here. For the other guys, it's about the turnover, the speed and the pace. You've got to think about these things. But your expectation, what you are trying to create, your customer, the vision that you want to create is very important, because that's what people will engage with. And it does come down to this little lovely here. Branding. You do also need to brand yourself, and actually you may well have more than one brand. You'll have the brand that you present to the money men, and you'll have the brand that you take to the young people. I was interested in talking to this young man. What's your name?
Louis.
Louis. Speaking to Louis earlier on about his idea, which is a lovely idea. Now, I'm from a firmly corporate management background, and I went into the iLab in Bedford, which is a business park where we have our offices to deliver a course. And I walked down a corridor, and there was loads of young people with all sorts of variously coloured hair, bits of metal in their face, and weird clothes. And as a 43-year-old man from a business background was going, "Blimey, who let them in?" Because that's my immediate impression. And I would never have hired one of those people for any of the jobs that I've done. However, I found out that, I mean, coming back to what you were talking about, that these were young people between 18 and 25 who had been specifically employed because of the way they looked, because they were working with young drug offenders in and around Bedford. They were counsellors. They'd go out and talk to people. Now, the thing is that if I arrived in a suit and tie going, "Hey, let's talk about drugs," they'd probably just completely disengage. But if someone that they could relate to, like you, exactly what you're talking about, was there, engage with them, fantastic, because suddenly you can relax and be involved with that. So there's a brand that you present to the client, and there's a brand for the customer. Here are some famous brands, just so you can see how they've developed over the years. Branding is about simplicity. KISS, anybody know what KISS stands for? It's my favourite phrase. Thank you, yes. Keep it simple, stupid. Keep things simple, and that just not for branding, that goes for everything that you do. And you can see that all of these are very simple. My favourite is what VW has gone from in, let's just zoom into that one. I like this. We can just do that. Here we go. I wonder why they changed that in the 1930s. But if you have a look at them, they've become simpler and simpler and simpler. And the thing about branding is that people see those brands and they will relate emotion to them. A brand or a logo is not a picture. It represents your business. It represents how people think and feel about it. My favourite, actually, I was about to touch the screen, can't do that, is Apple. Because there's some interesting facts. I'm great on a pub quiz, by the way. I'm full of entirely useless information. There's two interesting stories about Apple. The first is that byte there is spelt B-Y-T-E, as in a byte of information. That's why there is a byte from the Apple. But it's also a reference to Alan Turing. I don't know if any of you have seen The Imitation Game. Alan Turing worked on the Bletchley Project, broke the Enigma code, the father of artificial intelligence. He was a homosexual who was tried for homosexuality in the 50s, and he was given the choice of chemical castration or imprisonment. He chose chemical castration so he could continue his work, and he eventually committed suicide by taking a bite from an apple laced with cyanide. So this is not only clever in terms of a bite, but it is Steve Jobs' little homage to Alan Turing. There you go. Bet you didn't know that. Aha. There you go. That's just a little interesting snippet there. My favourite, actually, this one, look. This is what the Windows looked like in 1985. Pretty much the same now. That's really because Windows 8 is no better than Windows 85, I've noticed. They've just, deliberate that was. So define that purpose and vision. What do you want that logo, that brand to represent? And again, there may be different representations of that for different client bases. How do you want people to perceive you? When they see that, what do you want them to think? Are they you're thinking professional, informal? Are you thinking fun? Are you thinking serious? What do you want that to represent? Have a little strap line, and we all know, every little helps. Who's that? Just do it. Never knowingly undersold. There we go. Little strap lines. And the most important element here is congruence. When you are doing any kind of marketing or branding activity, the word congruence means that wherever people encounter your marketing, it looks the same. So your business card looks the same as your leaflet, looks the same as your website, which looks the same as your painted up van. Because that shows, firstly, it takes around about 8 times for people to recognize a brand and for it to sink into their kind of subconscious. So that congruence is very important. They see the same thing over and over again. They remember it better. But also it breeds trust, because people see that you are consistent, and consistency breeds trust, and trust generates sales. And also, if you give them a business card and they go to a website that looks entirely different, they think they're in the wrong place, and they will go back to Google and navigate away from you, because there will be literally 496 pages of other people who are doing what you're doing. Because, you know, there are very few unique ideas left. There's always variations on themes, and other people are doing similar kinds of things to you that you have to compete against. You want to make sure that your customer sees you. So that congruence and keeping them interested and keeping them not confused is very important. So there's so many things that are very important, aren't they? No? Yeah.
So what is the story behind your branding that I can see?
It's about growth. It's tree. So we help businesses grow. And our strapline, because WENTA doesn't really mean anything, does it? Well, it does. It stands for Watford Enterprise Agency, WENTA. That's what WENTA stands for. But we have on all of our stuff Inspiring Enterprise. That's what we have. That's our strapline. If you go to our website, the meta tag under the website describes what we do to encourage people to click. Legal requirements. This is very, 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 very important. Because if you don't have all of your legal stuff up to scratch, you may well find yourself in a world of hurt, because ignorance, as the saying says, is not an excuse. If you go, oh, I didn't know, tough, you're still going to get sued. So here are some of the most common ones you will have to think about. In terms of insurance, there's public liability insurance. Public liability insurance protects you against idiots tripping over stuff, essentially. So if you put a box on the floor as you're locking up your car, someone trips over it, breaks their arm and sues you for loss of earnings, that's what your public liability insurance covers you for. Similarly, if you delivered a course somewhere, left all the taps running and flooded the entire building out, and they needed £10,000 of damages, public liability insurance will cover you for that. So it's a good one to have across the board, and it's generally not massively expensive, obviously depending on the risk inherent in what you do. If you are going to take kids up a climbing wall on a regular basis, your public liability insurance will be certainly a little bit higher than if you are just, I don't know, getting them to pick up litter on the street or something like that. So that's a good one to have. Professional indemnity insurance is to protect you against claims of negligence or bad practice. So if you are giving advice, training or support to people, if you are a photographer, a hairdresser needs it just in case they give a bad haircut, it protects against people saying, you were going to do this and you didn't. Well, they do, yeah. For instance, I could say to you, the best way to promote your business is to paint yourself blue, take your clothes off and run through the centre of Oxford. That may well get you noticed, but probably not in a good way, and I'll see you in prison sometime, you know, and helping you start your business up. I would probably get sacked by WENTA for doing that, but you would probably want to sue me as well. In which case, my professional indemnity insurance covers me for that. Does tend to be a little bit more expensive than public liability insurance, but considering what a lot of you might be doing, it is something that you would need to think about and establish. I don't know if any of you are going to create a product, whether you're going to engage with people and they're physically going to make something and you're going to sell it on. If you make a product and you sell it on, product liability insurance protects you against claims of the product being a problem. So you make a toy car, you don't file the nail off properly, someone scratches themselves, gets gangrene and have to have their arm chopped off. They sue you. That's what product liability insurance helps you with. And business continuity insurance means that if for any reason you cannot work for a period of time, that insurance for a certain amount of time will fill up your wages for you. Because you are going to have to pay yourselves at some point in these processes.
Linked to that, there's also the usual sort of property insurance. For example, if your premises got flooded,
yeah,
which is quite a topical issue.
It is.
You may need two things. One's to recover the property, yeah, and reinstate the property, but the other is the business continuity element. because you've lost earning potential during that time. The two often complement each other.
So if you work from home and you're keeping stock and stuff at home, you might need to check whether your home contents insurance covers you for things like that. Also, your vehicles. If you're driving around representing your social enterprise, you need to have business insurance on your car, which in many cases actually doesn't cost very much at all, if anything. I mean, my business insurance was just added for free. I mean, I've never been charged for it. But it does come down to, again, research, because you've got DBS, haven't you? The lovely DBS if you're working with kids. If you're working with people with adults, vulnerable adults, you've got SOVA, you know, safeguarding issues as well that you have to get involved with. Now, I used to work for Mind, the mental health charity. I volunteered with them when I was unemployed. And I had to have my SOVA training, and I had to have my DBS sorted. So, you know, all of these things that you have to think about, particularly as I'd imagine quite a few of you are going to be working with vulnerable groups. And you need to find out the specifics of that. Some of the places you can go to find this information out, I'll put some links here. HSE, the Health and Safety Executive, quick pub quiz. How many things have the HSE banned in the last 25 years? Do you reckon? Everything. Everything? No. The only thing the Health and Safety Executive have banned in the last 25 years is asbestos. The HSE just say, do you know what the risks are? Yes. Can you minimise or eliminate those risks? Yes. Well, write that down and we're happy. The people who ban stuff are insurance companies who then say, oh, it's because health and safety madness, because they can't get insurance for it. So don't blame them. Actually, they're one of the most sensible government agencies you could ever hope to have interactions with. They're brilliant. Very good resource if you've got risk assessments and stuff, which again, if you're working with kids, particularly in the demographic you're thinking about, you've got to have those kind of risk assessments in place. The Law Society are very good. The Law Society in general will give small enterprises 30 minutes free consultation. So certainly used to, I believe they still do, but that's useful because then you can say to them terms and conditions, contracts, what do I need, that kind of stuff. Trading Standards Association is more to do with retail stuff. So if you've got people who are making stuff and you're selling it so they can actually, they create a product and sell it further, Trading Standards can help. And the Trade Association Forum. Trade associations are groups of people who have similar concerns. They get together and they go to insurance companies, suppliers, etc., and say, I've got 8,000 members, gives a discount, and we'll recommend all of them to you. So the TA Forum is a website where you can go and check to see whether there's trade associations within your particular industries and areas that might be able to get you help. Professional bodies as well. I was mentioning to Lou earlier on that the CVS, the Community Voluntary Services, are absolutely superb at helping social enterprises.
Just one other point I want to come in on there, because
please.
it's related to trading standards. A number of you may think about doing something involving food, selling soup, in a classic example. Please, before you do it, unless you're actually going to give it away and test it, you need to think in terms of getting in touch with your local environmental health people and making sure that the premises that you're working on meet the minimum standards, because if you produce some soup and somebody gets food poisoning, you're in big trouble. So that's another area. It goes back to research. Find out, ask the questions before you actually do these things, because you could make yourselves liable. Planning's another thing. You can't go up and just erect a business in the middle of the centre of Oxford. You'll have the planning authorities. I think you had a bit of an experience with your buses. Quickly, do you want to mention that? Ben?
Just because you're looking for planning permission for something which is a good project that benefits the community does not mean you'll get any freedom in terms of the council levying any regulation on your venture. And from what we thought was a great project, even though it was subverted. So once we had planning permission refused, we went to look at parish councils to have a localism that support us. But even local parish councils were against it, because you can demonstrate they benefit in 5 years' time. The political and legal barriers can be even bigger than the financial ones.
It's interesting in Luton, for instance, A-frames, you know, that you put outside of shops, not allowed in Luton, because people might fall over them. I mean, just look where you're blooming going. Also, I mean, if you're going to make any adjustments to your property, your house, to accommodate your business, you might need planning permission for that. The general rule is that if you're using a room in your home and it returns to its normal purpose at the end of the day, you don't need to seek planning permission. But if you are knocking down walls, making adjustments, bringing people to your home or your property, then you might have business rates and things like that you have to think about. And local councils can be quite supportive. Sorry?
What about business rates?
Business rates.
Yes, if you're using a room in your house or in your business, does that then...
No, provided, like I said, at the end of the day, it can return to its normal purpose. Let me give you an example. My friend Annette is a beauty therapist. You have to say beauty therapist. If you call them beauticians, they hit you. I was doing a course once, and there were a number of beauty therapists, and I called them beauticians, and the lady at the break came up and said, I suggest you never call them beauticians again. Beauticians can be qualified in 3 months. Beauty therapists take 3 years. Call them beauticians again and they will kill you. So she's a beauty therapist. She uses a conservatory. And she has a collapsible treatment table. She takes it into the conservatory, she opens it up, she does a waxing, plucking, whatever it is. And then at the end of the day, she collapses the treatment table, puts it back in the cupboard, and the conservatory has got a TV in it, wicker chairs, and the kids play in it. So it returns to its normal purpose. If she takes that treatment table and screws it permanently to the floor, she may need to get permission because she is making a permanent change to that room. And I was on a course once and I was doing this and one guy said, no, that's utter rubbish. It's better to ask forgiveness, better beg forgiveness than ask permission. And when he went to the toilet a little while later, I very rarely say this about my clients, but I said to the rest of the 20 people in the room, he's an idiot. By the way, if you nick a cookie, by all means, beg forgiveness from mummy. But if you knock a wall through, and you haven't asked the council and they object, really, you're a numpty. So all I say is about the research is going, look, what is going on? Because obviously you've had some experience of this, unfortunately. They try to be accommodating. Sometimes they're not because of politics. We've come across that ourselves recently with a particular project. But always ask permission, don't beg forgiveness. That is a stupid thing to do. And environmental health, by the way, my experience of environmental health, because we deal with a lot of caterers, people setting up mobile catering businesses, are brilliant. They're very helpful, very, very supportive. And, you know, they come in and it's about number of doors between the kitchen and the toilet, it's whether there's dogs around and stuff like that. And they will come up with recommendations and come back and check later on. They are really, really supportive. So if you are thinking of doing something like that, they're a great resource. Okay. We're nearly done. I've got one more slide. Now, I'm not going to go through this massively because, funnily enough, in 2 weeks I'm back and we're going to be talking about all of this specifically, in amongst things like tax and cash flow and all that lovely stuff. But you still need to think about these. Start getting the information together. Startup costs. Startup costs are the things you need to buy before you can even consider trading or starting your enterprise. So insurances, premises, stock, equipment, whatever it is. You need to know how much that is because you need to find that money, okay, from wherever it is. And then you need to approach someone with a sensible proposal saying, I need this because. Look at your...
For a Do It award, that is absolutely essential because that is what a Do It award is for. Or if you're going for a Try It award in a small scale, we want to know what it is you're going to be spending your money on, or our money.
I'm afraid you never get something for nothing in these days. I mean, you do get something. We do grants, for instance. I mean, the Luton Airport provide us with a £1,000 grant that we can give to start-up businesses in Luton. But they will not part with that £1,000 unless there is a business plan with a cash flow forecast that demonstrates that £1,000 has a chance of being spent wisely and goes to a business that will grow. Because there really is no point in piling money into something that ain't going to work. And that's what this is all about. This essentially comes down to the viability. Look at your suppliers. Who are they? Where are they? Who are my alternatives if my suppliers go a bit wonky? And I'll give you a little taster of cash flow. Cash flow is the most... Cash is king. 80% of businesses fail because they run out of cash, whether they are big enterprises or small enterprises. And one enterprise was one called Zavvi. Does anybody remember Zavvi? Was Virgin Megastore, then Virgin sold Zavvi, sold Virgin Megastores to Zavvi. And they sold CDs, DVDs, computer games, etc. in big shops. There was a massive 3-storey shop in Milton Keynes shopping centre that I used to frequent because I'm a dreadful nerd and I like stuff like... No, I'm a geek. Sorry, not a nerd. Nerds don't have friends. Geeks do. That's the definition. They went out of business overnight. Zavvi disappeared like that. The reason they disappeared is because they'd made the mistake of having one supplier for all of their goods. And that one supplier was a tiny weeny little company called Woolworths. Yeah, so when Woolworths went bust, they took Zavvi with them because Zavvi had no stock to sell. They had no money, they couldn't pay wages, they couldn't pay rent. Done, finished. So, suppliers, investigate them. Who's going to be supplying you? Have contingencies. So you'll have your preferred suppliers, but you'll have other people that can support that if that goes a bit pear-shaped. Your survival budget is how much you cost. You figure out how much money do I need to take from this enterprise to be able to pay my bills. If you like, let's call it your salary, your wages. Because it has to profit by at least that much to make it viable. Because, you know, it's got to put clothes on your back, roof over your head, food in your belly. If it can't do that, it's useless. Anybody know Maslow's hierarchy of needs here, by the way? Yeah? Maslow's hierarchy is brilliant, isn't it? Starts at the bottom of the pyramid that you need heat, shelter and food. And then it goes up to self-actualization at the top. There is a new bottom part of that pyramid. Why? The main essential thing that we need to survive, yes, it's Wi-Fi. Without that, everything else is rubbish. So survival budget, calculate that, but again we're going to talk more about this in greater depth in 2 weeks' time. Your sales forecast. Your sales forecast is more obviously about how much money you need from the funders. So if I'm going to help 10 children a month to train, it's going to cost me this much. In that case, I will need that much funding from that person. And we'll have a look at that in the elements of cash flow in a couple of weeks' time. And then, yes, this. Because ultimately, any business, regardless of its social purpose, has to be viable. It ultimately has to make more money than it spends. If it's making you money, it's a business. If it's losing you money, it's a hobby. So even social enterprises ultimately have to make more money than they spend. The pressure on them to make a huge amount of cash is less than a traditional business. But like we said right at the beginning, if your social enterprise is not achieving a profit, you will ultimately not be able to help out the people that you want to help. Which is why Wenta, 32 years on, is still going and still growing. Whereas so many other enterprises like ourselves have just fallen by the wayside. What we've got is an element of our business that generates income which supports our social purpose. And that means that regardless of funding, we can always do a small amount of help. I mean, we've got no funding because of the elections coming up. We've lost a contract, and the likelihood is that we're not going to get any contracts until round about January, February next year. Because no one's going to make any decisions before the election. It'll take about 6 months after the election for that kind of start rolling again. The great thing about us is that because we produce this surplus on our property, is that we can continue to give advice in a much smaller way, but we can still continue to give advice to the people who need it. And then hopefully, well, not hopefully, definitely in about maybe a year's time, we start getting the big contracts back in again, so we can take the pressure off our property department and let them get on with earning money. So,
just want to illustrate that with an important point. If you were to come to me today and I were to commission you to deliver a project on behalf of Olsia, and I'm paying you to do it, so X, Y, Z, you're going to deliver X, Y, Z, I'm paying you £100. How soon do you think you get that £100? Typically, how soon do you think you get it?
Financial year?
Within the financial, well, hopefully, yeah, within the financial year. But typically, the minimum will be 30 days.
yeah, if you're lucky, yeah.
And that all depends on how quickly you can get the invoice in. You get me the invoice, how quickly I process it, I then pass it on to purchasing. So you're looking at a week there. Our terms and conditions state payment in 30 days. We're very good. I don't know what the average is. About 90 days.
90. Tesco, 120-day payment terms. You provide something to Tesco, you get paid 4 months later, and they are on record as being one of the worst payers in the country, and are generally 3 months late. Which, if you do work for Tesco's, that is essentially 7 months before you see any money. And when we talk about cash flow in a couple of weeks' time, Jeff's quite right. One of the things you're going to have to plan into that cash flow is the fact that there might be 2, 3, 4 months that you operate with zero income. So you're going to have to find that from somewhere. But that's where cash flow can help with those kind of things. So just to wind up, bringing it all together, you've done all this research, and all this research should be planted very firmly in a single document called a business plan. You need a business plan. I know there is a template available from the university, but also if you go onto Google and put business plan template into it, you will get thousands of results. Go onto the Wenta website, there's a business plan template on the Wenta website under tools. A business plan is a document, and we haven't got a business planning course this time, but a business plan is a document that is generally 10 to 15, maybe 20 pages maximum, and it is highlights. So statement and evidence, and you then have appendices. So you take your research, you summarise the important parts into the business plan, and for full details, look at the appendix. You don't want, like I was presented with once, 30 pages of text. I was given a business plan once for a grant, which was 30 pages of solid writing. And I went, do you know what? I'm not even going to open it, go away and do something else, because there's no way anyone's going to read it and give you any cash. And it is important to have that structure around it, because like we said right at the beginning, it is your responsibility to continually challenge that business. Be a Lucozade, not a Zavvi. You know, Lucozade had their eye on the ball and they kept moving forward. Zavvi did a very rookie, stupid mistake and they were buried. You want to be a Lucozade, not a Zavvi. So make sure that you use the business plan, the research that you've done, to continually say, is this working? Right, it is. That's fine. I can put it to one side, but that's a bit shaky. I'm going to do some further research, or look at what I did before. Because that's what makes a successful business. You can do all the planning you like in the beginning, and that is important. But what so many people do is they do all this research, they create a plan, they do a cash flow because there's an award, or because they need a grant, or because they need a loan. Then they shove all of that in a drawer and forget about it. And that is the worst thing you can possibly do. Your business is going to be a living, breathing entity. You need to continually fuel it and feed it. And you fuel it with your energy, your good sense, and bloody good research.
And if there's one lesson to be learned, which is going on at the moment, from a business which failed to do the research, and how many of you in the last 10 years ago had a Nokia phone? Okay. No. How many of you got a Nokia phone now? And what's happened to Nokia? Yeah, because they did not move forward. They did not continue to research what the market was actually doing and how it was moving and how customer behaviour was changing, and they fell out. So even companies as multinational, multi-million pound companies get it wrong. You don't stop doing research after you've set the business up. You keep doing it, you keep doing it, you keep doing it. Yeah. You research, you research, you research.
Kodak went, digital technology, it's a flash in a pan. Do you know what? Bill Gates once said this internet thing's rubbish. I mean, I think he changed his mind pretty quickly. But, you know, it sums up, hopefully. It's your business. Own it, work it, grow it. Work it, baby. Okay? It's up to you. You're the only person who can do this. It's down to your... And, you know, you're here of an evening. You went out on a residential trip at the weekend. You demonstrate passion and commitment by the very fact that you're sitting here tonight listening to me waffle on for 2 hours. So I thought I'd help you out a little bit. Here's a slide. Have I gone too far? Yeah, here we go. With some good contact details. So we've got 21 things to research before starting a business, which is quite fun. Start Your Own Business, which is the government site for this. How to Research a Business Idea, which is another one. National Enterprise Network is a network that is a professional body for my type of business. So again, sourcing people within Oxford and around here that might be able to do business advice and support you in that way. Office for National Statistics. Funny enough, if you want to look for some research, it's not a bad place to go. Company's House, so if you're going to set up your limited company, they've got a great, actually, helpline and a service on there. Good Small Business Guide is a book. That leads you to an Amazon link, which has got some great reviews. The Chartered Institute of Marketing, a very useful resource in terms of how to market and some places to go to get marketing. And, oh, look, there's a little company down there who might be able to help out. You never know. Check out our website. You might be impressed. So this is what we've talked about today. We've had a look at what is the research, qualifiable, quantifiable research. Figure out where you are now and then go out and research the right things. Pretty much everything, every element of your business needs to have some kind of sense and fact behind it. So your customer, your brand, legal, finance, suppliers, the works. I mean, it's no stone unturned, but the more of this you do in the early stages, you can just get on with running your business and running your enterprise, and you just need to go back and touch on it every so often. It becomes something you maintain rather than something you have to do. And just to sum up and finish off today, we've got 2 more events yet, and I'm sure there are other events that Jeff's got organised for you guys as well. But in terms of what I'm doing on the 18th of Feb, so in 2 weeks' time, budgeting and financial planning. Like I said, plenty of coffee, you might want to double up on that. And then on the 18th of March, we're going to do project management. So how to manage a project. It was really good fun. I had good fun with that one last year, actually. It was a laugh. So we're going to talk about things like delegation and Gantt charts and all that kind of lovely stuff. So that's what we've got going on. That's me finished for now, actually. That's not bad. Only 4 minutes, 3 minutes over.